Here with Chris Hanks, head coach at Colorado Mesa, 25th season with over 1,000 wins. Has them rolling right now, 45 and 9 record. Has won 17 in a row. Just won your tournament, heading into the regionals. 24-year continuous member of the ABCA, Division II committee chair, also on the competition, organizational, and rules committee. So, Chris, thanks for jumping on with me.
Pleased to be here.
Can you fit any more committees in? Because I need some help with the youth and the travel committees.
Oh, yeah, I actually probably do. I just like to. I'm at a point in my career now where I want to try to help make things better for all levels, and particularly the one that I currently coach at. I think that we can always improve things.
Do you think that's as you get older? I think you figure out that hey, it's now my time to try to help those that are coming behind me or give back to the game a little bit more. When you're early on, you're just trying to get your career started. Do you feel like as you get older in your career, it's more about giving back then?
I do. If I reflect back on the beginning of my career, it was, I mean, largely, I don't want to say all about me, but I wanted to build a program, win games, play for championships, whatever, what have you. And as you grow and you move forward, you see some things that could be better. They need to change. And I accepted a role on the National Division II Baseball Committee for 4 years for the sole purpose of having access to trying to make the Division II national tournament better, improve things at Cary. There's great people in Cary, North Carolina, but I've also had access to the Junior College World Series in Grand Junction forever, and they do it like none other in my mind. I mean, they have done such a great job. There's things that can be mirrored, and and so to answer your question, yeah, I think that from rules to brackets to tournament setups to access for student athletes, I think, yeah, I have a great desire to just try to improve things for the coaches and the players.
Is that the benefit of the Division Two Connect? I love the Division Two Connect. When I first got the job, I was on a couple calls before JR jumped back on with those. Is that a huge benefit for you all with doing the Division Two Connect, where all the head coaches, where the head coaches from the different conferences jump on a conference call with the Division Two?
Yeah, you're talking about the coaches connection, I think. Yeah, I mean, it's a great sharing of ideas. The hard thing I found with that, it's a great program, uh, getting everybody on the same page, and then it's usually a monthly call. Moving things forward is just painfully slow, because there will be people that miss the call for various reasons, and you have to bring them up to speed, and then moving it into maybe turning it into NCAA legislation or proposals is time consuming.
You know, the challenge with that is the geography piece, correct? Because
Yeah.
everybody in different parts of the country has different challenges, and
Yep.
Division One didn't have a starting date forever, and it was a huge advantage for the teams in the South because they could
Yep.
start. You look back in the old days, Arizona State and Miami were starting in the middle of January,
Yep.
and they only had to play 3 games basically the entire year. And if you only got to play 3 games a week for the entire year, you might need 9 pitchers to get through that, as opposed
Right.
to in the Midwest when you're playing 6 games a week. You're going to need a heck of a lot more, and that scholarship money goes real quick when you've got to have 16 or 17 arms as opposed to 9 arms.
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, I think a lot of baseball coaches agree. I mean, the time to play college baseball would be July through November, and everybody would be kind of on an equal playing field. We'd be finishing up all the World Series about the same time MLB's playing their World Series, but that realistically probably will never happen. And I don't even think we'd be competing against football per se. I mean, people say that, but it's a difficult. You look at the situation in the Northeast with the weather, um, in the Midwest, the upper Midwest. Uh, there's just different strengths and weaknesses across the country. And as you get out west, like the situation we're in, uh, the biggest barrier is travel. I mean, our where we're located, we have in Grand Junction, Colorado, we have one Division II opponent non-league that's within 9 hours. But we have, I think, nine Division I schools in proximity to us within that same footprint. But the Division Ones won't play Division Twos really anymore. And when I first started coaching, our non-league schedule was primarily made up of playing BYU, Utah, UNLV, New Mexico, and that just doesn't happen anymore.
Well, I think coaches have gotten smarter at all levels. Like a Division One coach, and we played 9 Division 1s at Western because that was the only way we could get home games at Western Illinois because we didn't have lights and it was hard for people to get to us. Those were the games I was the most nervous about as a Division 1 head coach because you knew how good all teams are across all levels, and you knew if your guys weren't ready to play, and you would hope that your guys are going to get ready to play. But you know how kids are now; they're like, "Oh, we're only playing a Division 3 school or a Division 2 school now."
Yeah.
You'll get punched in the mouth, and I think that has a lot to do with scheduling now. Is that Division 1 coaches know that if you play the better Division 2 or Division 3 programs out there, you're still going to have your hands full with those teams.
Well, you are, and as baseball people know. Sorry about that. I'm going to turn off my. I forgot to silence my phone. Um, in our game, uh, there's one guy that affects the game so drastically. It's like I tell people, we were fortunate in 2005 to have Sergio Romo as our ace. That guy has 3 World Series rings, just retired after 15 years in the major leagues. I'll tell you, in 2005, I'll go down, play LSU one game or Texas. And I'm not saying we're going to win, but I'm going to say they're going to have their hands full with that guy. We're going to be in the game.
Jamie Carroll is a college teammate of mine. He loves Sergio. Says he's the best guy, best baseball guy he's ever been around. Said he,
Sergio's incredible. You have to get to know him and I mean, Sergio is who he is and he doesn't apologize for it.
that's how he made it though. Like he made it.
Yeah,
He made it, and he stuck because he's always been who he is. Like he trusts who he is.
he's genuine. I mean, whether you like it or not, if you spend enough time around him, I guarantee you're going to love him.
Yes.
Now, I don't know if you want to compete against him. You talk about a fierce competitor. I've never seen anything quite like him as a coach. I mean, just a next level competitor and next level of confidence internally. Um, but
Is that
yeah,
innate or is that developed? Did he come out of the womb with that, or was that developed by
I,
environment?
I think he came out of the womb like that, and then it was enhanced over time. But I think most of that is innate. I think it's born. What a character, man.
He's he's unreal. I loved watching him pitch. Loved it. You've never had a losing season. You've averaged 40 wins a year. You've only missed the regionals 5 times. I mean, and you were an assistant there and you coached football too. But I mean, did you know that when you took over as head coach, like we got a chance to do this? I mean, I don't know of anybody like any level. I don't know of anybody that's averaged 40 wins a season's never had a losing season.
Well, I think I to answer that question, I felt like we could be great. And what do we need to be great? And how do you define great? And to me, winning is hard. And I've talked to people about this. Our own players, winning's hard. Winning consistently is even harder because once you win consistently, there's a lot of other things that come up, complacency, um, you know, things like that. And you're dealing with 18 to 22-year-old kids. And how do you keep them grounded? How do you keep them focused? And we've experimented with a lot of things over time, but we've tried to develop a consistent approach and we've adapted it over the years. And I'm a, I really, really enjoy studying leadership. I enjoy figuring out what wins. I do think there are things that win consistently. I think attitudes, levels of effort, types of focus play into that. And trying to put those things in place so that you can have consistency. I mean, that's a big deal to us, and it always has been.
What are your favorite leadership books?
Well, I'll tell you, I really love a book by the name of Legacy about the New Zealand All Blacks. Great book. Uh, I love a book called The Compound Effect. I forget the author's name.
Great book.
Uh, Great book. I mean, guys, there's a lot. Those I loved Jay Billis's book on toughness. There's some great stuff in there. Um,
Yeah, but
and
I mean, I read a lot of books too, but I wasn't averaging 40 wins a year. So there's got to be something more to than just reading a leadership book and getting it figured out. You said you've adjusted some things to keep players grounded and still pushing forward. What are you doing a little bit different now than maybe when you first started?
we set weekly goals. We talk about them. I'm big into what I call planting seeds, and planting seeds of success, thoughts of success, developing pictures of what we want to achieve. But then, and you don't always achieve them, but we do most of the time. And, we set a lot of goals. Uh, and we honestly don't spend much time talking about winning. We talk about all the pieces that cause you to win. And so our guys have competitions throughout the game. People ask, I hear you guys cheering in the dugout even when you're down after a certain play. Oh yeah, guys are fighting to, you know, uh, we have competition for who can get the first sack bunt down, or hit the first sack fly, or steal the first base, or move up on a dirt ball, uh, or what we call a synergy play, a play that where a great uh, hustle has been displayed. It could be a left fielder backing up a play going to third. There's an overthrow, but the runner doesn't advance because left fielder's there. And so we actually have like a little score system where guys are trying to achieve those things, and they're all selfless for the most part. They're team oriented.
Who tracks your scores? So who keeps track of your points?
We have a trainer do that
Love it.
uh, in our dugout. Yeah, our trainer's
Give them
really
something to
active.
do.
Yeah, and we have signs in our dugouts. Guys get to pull down the signs. The cheering in the dugout is everybody celebrates. The guy comes in. If he has a 1-2-3 inning, the pitcher, he gets to come. We call it a kill, and he gets to pull a sign off the wall that says kill, and he gets to keep it. And my vision of it was like, I remember growing up watching that TV show. You may have too, Baba Black Sheep, and on those Corsair airplanes, they shoot down a Japanese plane. They get the little
Yep.
Japanese flag on their plane. So these guys get to collect those, and see how many they can get. And it becomes a little fun contest, but their success benefits the team.
I thought the secret was that your wife graduated from Mesa, actually.
Well, I'll tell you what, it might be I definitely married up, and I married the right gal uh, because she loves baseball, and she didn't know much about baseball when we got married, but she doesn't miss a game. Our kids have never missed games, and they're all in. So that makes my job a lot easier.
With recruiting, does it help that there's only one Division One in the state of Colorado for you? Does it help you from a Division Two standpoint? Because I look at Wisconsin.
Yep.
Wisconsin, there's one Division One. The Division Threes in Wisconsin are tremendous. Now, a lot of them are public schools. You look at Whitewater; it's a public school, so it's not your
Yep.
historical Division Three. Do you think that helps you a little bit in recruiting, just because there's not as many options for kids in the state?
I think maybe, I don't know for sure though, because I'll tell you, Colorado, as it turns out, ends up being for us one of the more difficult states to recruit. And I think that's because in totality, there's maybe not as many high level players as there is, say, in Southern California or Arizona. And a lot of the Colorado kids view getting out of Colorado as their ticket to developing a career. And then with fewer players, there's more Division Ones outside our state that will come into Colorado. I mean, about them. There's more kids, I think, that get lost in the shuffle in Southern California, or maybe Phoenix. So I don't think it hurts us. I don't know how much it helps us.
Yeah. Because PG National, when I was recruiting, when I would go, there were always good players. Think about Andy Burns and Peterson, like
Yep.
that. There were always good players from Colorado that were a PG National, always. Like
Well,
big body arms and
yep.
athletic position players.
The biggest hurdle we have, and I think this is true for most Division Twos, is these these kids aren't going through high school dreaming usually of going to Division II. And another layer that's become more difficult, I believe, is with the advent of social media and the perfect games and the rankings and the way kids can market themselves. Um, you know, it just makes it gives them access to a lot more places, and places to have access to them. A Division II is it's a tough place to recruit.
But for me, if I'm a kid, and I know it's a different generation, but if I look and there's a program that's won 40 games a year, I'm going to be intrigued by that program because I would rather go play at a place that's going to win and have success than someplace maybe a little higher level that I may not have success at. But I was a team guy. I'm a team first guy, but I grew up around
Well,
it.
and so, when if we're recruiting you and getting to know you, you become a target for us because we think your mindset is correct. And it's not an end all to say you're at a Power 5 with a certain school's name across the jersey. The point of the matter is you want to win, you want to be in a good culture, you want to develop, and you want to play in big games.
How soon do you figure that out when you call a kid? I know kids aren't great at communicating now. I have a 20-year-old and a 17-year-old. It's hard to get them to communicate. How soon when you talk to a kid are you like, okay, he might be one of our guys?
It changes sometimes right away. We figure it out. We run into a fair amount of kids that say the right things up front, but they end up wasting your time. And they're very interested. Maybe we get to them first. We get to some kids first a lot of times, and we have trouble getting them to commit. They like it. They've been on a visit. They want to keep their options open, and then bam, Division I calls. We just lost a kid to Ohio State that was an 11th hour, a kid that we thought he liked our school, a shortstop, could really hit. Um, I mean, to me, it was the right fit. Uh, but then the Ohio State called, and that's I mean, if you're a kid, I mean, these kids, Ohio State's a big deal. That name's a big deal, uh, I guess, to a lot of kids.
I
And they're,
I swung
you know,
through that campus, and I was at Iowa, so I've been to that campus a lot. But I swung through that campus. I went to visit Denison. That was one of my last 5 schools my senior year of high school, and I swung through that campus, and I spent 5 minutes on that campus. I was like, I would never go to this school, and I love the guys at Ohio State, and I love that campus now as an adult. But as a high school kid, I was like, I will get chewed up and eaten alive on that campus. And hopefully the Division I rules that are being put in place now trickle down to where it allows everyone to make more informed choices on where they end up or where they should end up, as opposed to now people are just throwing darts because they really haven't had a chance to research schools, especially at the Division I level with kids committing as early as they do.
uh,
People are just throwing darts at it right
yep.
now. They're just throwing darts at it.
Well, and I think that, I mean, this is only my opinion, but I think some of this early committing and where most of the bad decisions are made. I mean, when I look at just Colorado kids and I look at we know who's committed early and all those things, and then when we look a year or two later who's in the transfer portal, um, it's largely those kids that made those really early uninformed decisions, and they made the decision probably based on the name of the school, the level of the school, and probably those schools are they're trying to be first to get to a kid. I mean, I think it would clean things up a lot if whether I'm at Colorado Mesa or Arizona State, if I like a sophomore in high school well enough and I want to commit him, I ought to be able to sign him,
Yes.
and then let's sign him, and
Yes.
then it's done.
I've
And
said
there's
it
a
forever.
financial.
I've said it for 20 years. That should be the case. It
Well, it
would
would
clean
slow
up
things
so
down, I
much.
think.
And by the way, parents and players listening, if you're listening in, buyer beware because 38% of the people now that go into the transfer portal don't find a school out of the transfer portal. So it's buyer beware. I think everybody thinks that the transfer portal is a quick fix and I'm going to find a school. You're looking at almost a 50-50 chance now that you may not have a college to go to once you go into the transfer portal.
That's exactly right. And I don't know, you think maybe moving forward that as that information gets out more and more, that people make maybe some more informed decisions. Um,
Well, even
But
like small things, this is what kids don't think about. Oh, I'm going in the transfer portal, which, okay, like not every situation is going to work out, but there can't be that many schools out there that we can't have that many bad coaches where kids want to leave the schools. It's just not possible. But the other part of that is you're delaying your graduation.
yeah, you
So,
are.
not every school is going to take all your credits from where you're coming from. So you're delaying your graduation. So you may have to, and now that COVID's over, that fifth year of more expenses, that's a big deal. That sixth year, if you're there sixth year, that's a huge deal from an expensive standpoint. And if we look at the percentages, you're probably not going to play in the big leagues. So
Yep.
you're incurring a lot of extra money by leaving the school that you're at. But
Well, not only that, yeah, you're exactly right. And now what's different than when I started coaching is you have these families spending all this money on travel ball leading up to that. And when you and I were growing up, when I was growing up, there wasn't travel ball. You played
Legion.
American Legion in the summer, and in the fall you played football or maybe another sport. And but when I started coaching, you didn't really go out very much in the fall. There wasn't fall baseball to watch. We got to focus on our own teams. Now we have to have an intricate calendar for who's going to be at home working with the team and who's going to be on the road recruiting. And it's tough. It's tough at every level that way.
How are you deciding high school, junior college, or transfer portal now with where you're at recruiting wise?
When I started, we were probably 80% junior college transfer program. Now it's flipped. We're 80% high school. I mean, we want homegrown kids out of high school, so that's our objective. We target usually higher achieving academic kids first, because that brings into play academic money, which can help land a kid right. And then we use the junior college and maybe transfer portal as a way to plug some holes. Although we haven't really used the transfer portal much yet. We've attempted to, but we've run into the same trouble with the kids that we think would be a good fit here. Um, they're looking for a bigger level, a higher level than Division two.
And I was dead set on deadlining kids for a long time. And then when I got to Western, I was like, I'm going to deadline kids because you brought it up. Kids don't like confrontation now. So even if they don't like your school, they're gonna answer your call because they don't like
Yep,
telling people no. So that's why I ended up deadlining kids towards the end at Western because I was like, they know if they want to come or not. They know. And
yep,
if we get to that deadline and they haven't said yes, I know they're not interested. And so they're wasting our time. And in a
yep,
roundabout way, we're going to stop wasting their time because
yep,
if they're talking to me, I'm going to keep talking to them. But it almost forced them to say, hey, I'm not interested in your school. And it saves everybody time. And I was like, hey, you're never going to hurt my feelings. Like, I've been told them no a lot. If you recruit long enough at the college level, you're going to have thick skin. I'm like, you're not going to hurt my feelings. Just here's a deadline and here's why, because I know you probably know if you want to come or not. And if not, that's cool. And I wish you the best of luck. But we need to try to get this thing going a little bit.
yeah. Kids will waste your time, and you find out that there's kids that end up falling in love with being recruited, and they will.
Everybody loves to be wanted.
Oh
I like
boy,
to be
yeah.
wanted. I mean, I can't blame them.
Well, and I wonder a little bit in this day and age with Twitter and everything else. You see all these. I'm reopening my recruitment. I'm decommitting, and in some cases, I simply think that they continue to be reached out by some schools. Maybe a school doesn't know they've committed, and there's some kids where it feels like there's no end to it.
Yes.
Uh, and those are the ones that are the least pleasurable to recruit.
They're also going to be the ones that are the least happiest on whatever campus they end up on.
I think there's no question about that. And if you can get kids dialed down to picking a school for the right reasons, um, then you have a chance. And those are kids that'll buy in. And we're a very heavily team oriented organization, and our seniors do all the dirty work. Our seniors carry the equipment. They clean the bus after a trip.
That's legacy.
Yeah,
Sweep the
and
sheds.
sweep the sheds, and the freshmen or sophomores know that it's their day someday to do that, and it's a hugely powerful thing.
Have you read Leaders Eat Last by Simon
Oh
Sinek?
yeah,
I
yep,
love that because that's a Marine thing. So the highest ranking officer in the Marines, it's an unwritten rule for the Marines. Anybody that hasn't read Leaders Eat Last, I love that book. I love Simon Sinek. Whatever he's done, it's great. But that's a Marine unwritten code: is the highest ranking individual in the room eats last, eats after everybody else. I love it.
yeah. His first book, uh, about figuring out your why, that's
Yeah.
a good book too. I love his TED Talk. His TED Talk is amazing. Um, you know, and
He shaped
it,
how to deal with millennials. Like when I finally started to pay attention to what he was doing, he spoke to me on that piece of the millennials. You know, that's where he's more focused. He hasn't done as much with the Gen Zs and now the Gen Alphas, but he was really dialed into the millennials and what the millennials wanted. And I started to change some things as a coach because of what he was putting out there.
yeah, those are some books. So as we talked earlier, that are really good. I mean, there's just so many, and um, there's a new one out that I'm getting ready to read. My assistant's read it, and he said I needed to read it, and it's the gentleman who did the video on making your bed. It was at a commencement speech. He just wrote a book, something about the bullfrog.
Okay, I
Um,
haven't read it. I read the one where he went through the 10 things in the commencement speech, and the making
yeah,
your bed video is in my coach's talk that I give because it's on habit building. One of the talks I give is on habit forming and peak performance. So that's one of the videos that I show as the habit forming piece in that talk. It's good. I love that video.
there's a couple other guys I want to mention too that have been very impactful to me along the way. A gentleman named Rod Olson. Uh, and I don't know if you know of Rod, but if you don't, you'd love to get to know him. In fact, he was the one that just tried to call while we were on our Zoom call. He runs an organization called Coaches of Excellence, um, and he worked with the Pittsburgh Pirates, the Rangers. He's worked with a lot of different organizations, but then that got me tied up with a gentleman named Kyle Stark, who was the assistant GM for the Pirates. Kyle's just off the charts great at this stuff, and they had invited me to a Pittsburgh Pirates think tank a couple of times, where I was exposed to uh, guys from the Navy SEALs, the Army Rangers, the guys who teach the SEALs, the instructors, and actually got some good stuff from them that we apply in our program daily.
What'd you learn from Skip Walker?
Skip Walker. Well, first of all, he's still, I mean, overall the best hitting guy I've been around. He was very influential to me with some hitting stuff, and I had a great experience playing at the College of Southern Idaho. It was a last minute deal, and um, that guy wanted to win, and
Chris Welker played for us at Iowa and then coached with us at Iowa, so he was a CSI grad. So
yeah,
I actually saw Chris and I drove the equipment out from University of Iowa to Fresno, California. We were saving money on the bag fees with the equipment, and we split the trip up out there. And we stopped in Rangeley, Colorado, and watched CSI play in a doubleheader. And I think it started at noon. You know, we stayed in the Rockies. We split it up, but we got there in time for BP. We're watching BP, and we get through the first game, and then somebody watching the game was like, "Hey, where are you guys going?" We're like, "Well, we're going to Vegas." He goes, "Hey, you better get out of here because the bull deer are going to be running through the roads here, and you're probably going to get your car smashed." So I was like, "Hey, well, we got to go." So we went to Vegas, spent some time there watching some high school kids. So Jeff Malm was coming out of Vegas at that time. Johnny Field ended up going to Arizona, who was on that team at Bishop Gorman. Paul Sewald went to San Diego. So that Bishop Gorman team was good. We went and watched them work out and then got to Fresno. But after we were done with that tournament in Fresno, we had a midweek game against Northern Iowa. We had to drive 27. Chris and I drove 27 straight hours back in the Suburban. We were in a vehicle for 27 straight hours. We should have died somewhere along the road, but we made it, luckily. But my nervous system was a little shot when we got back to Iowa City, being 27 hours in the car.
That's a lot of miles.
But I mean, you're on the golden anniversary team for junior college. There's only 50 years of junior college baseball. There's only 50 players and two coaches, or 20 players. It's not even
Yeah.
20 players. So, and obviously you're a very humble human being. But if I was on the golden anniversary junior college team, I'd shot that out a little bit more.
Well, yeah, we had that was my sophomore year at College of Southern Idaho. I had a good tournament that weekend, and I had a good 2 year career at CSI. We really came close to winning that thing. We ended up finishing third. We got beat by Wayne Graham and San Jack 8-7 uh, late in that game. And then I think the Hillsboro, Florida team won it that year. They beat San Jack the next night. But that actually, I think that was the first year of the bracket. They had changed the bracket. We had actually beaten the Hillsboro, Florida team. So there were three teams with one loss. So they did a coin flip, I think is how they did it. And we lost the flip. So we beat Hillsboro, Florida, and then had to turn around and play San Jack. We beat Florida, and they got to go to the championship game. And that never felt right, but
I don't understand that with both. I love both tournaments. I love Grand Junction. I love Enid, but there's coin flips that happen with that, and it just I was like, either we got to add more teams or cut some teams back. Like for me, I think you add some teams so you don't run into that deal at the end. So it's a coin flip because it's unfair. I mean, you're leaving it to it shouldn't be a 50-50 chance that happens on a coin flip.
well, what would be incredible is if the NJCAA could successfully recruit California schools and the Northwest and get those teams involved and maybe turn this into a 12 team thing in Grand Junction or, whittle it down some other way. And the folks in Grand Junction have always wanted that, but I don't think we've ever been able to get California to join the NJCAA
Yeah, that's
because
the big
boy,
holdup because their state championship runs into I guess the only way you make that work is you have them push up a week and then their championship ends before Grand Junction starts is the way that you
yeah,
alleviate
no,
that.
you could do that, but I think you could also take a north winner and possibly a north winner and a south
South winner.
winner, and the way they do with Texas. There's a chance of two Texas teams that make it to the Junior College World Series, but yeah, what an event it is here.
It's tremendous. Who do you feel like had the most impact on you when you were a young coach?
My dad, Jim Walker did, as you mentioned, Skip Walker, and then a gentleman named Tom Petroff as well.
Coach Petrov.
Um, my dad was a high school and college football coach for 32 years. I actually grew up with more of a football background than baseball. I did both, um, which is why I really ended up coaching both when I came to Mesa. Initially, during the off seasons, the years that I didn't play some form of winter ball, I volunteered at high schools and coached football because I thought I might want to do that. And he was very, I grew up in a coach's house, so he was the biggest influence. Skip Walker was next, and then my last spring with the Tigers, Tom Petroff was the director of minor league development, I believe, and I spent a lot of time talking to him about coaching. He knew I wanted to coach, and he actually invited me to come back as an instructor, which I passed on because uh, I didn't. I think I wanted to try the college game, but my spring there with the Tigers, Tom Petrov did such an amazing job organizing the practices for AAA down to the short season team. He did all the practice plans with the managers and coaches, but those would get posted on each row of you have the AAA lockers, the AA lockers, the single A lockers, and he'd have all those. And at the end of the night, when the day was over, I took all those practice plans every day for a whole spring training and built a notebook. And he knew I was doing that. And I remember the one thing he told me is he said, Chris, you're going to have to come up with 20 different ways to teach every concept. And I said, why is that? And he goes, because kids are going to learn differently. And it was really a powerful piece of advice.
Did any of those guys try to talk you out of coaching?
No, none of them did.
See, mine
None of them
did.
did. Did they?
Mine did. They were like, you should probably think about doing something else. It's too hard. But I was like, no, no, no. I love it. I love it. Did you take anything from the
That's kind of
football
the
side? I mean, did you
uh,
bring anything from the football side over the baseball side?
yeah. I'll tell you what football does for you. Football, I think, has been largely light years ahead of baseball in a lot of areas, from strength and conditioning, which now that gap's been closed, to a lot of things. But football teaches you, from a practice standpoint, a tempo for like a practice that, even though our game's slow when we play it, practicing at a higher intensity level for shorter durations at a good tempo is better. It just is. And that's what I think football teaches more than anything
So your
there.
practice plans now, like how long do you guys go when you're going practice wise? How long do you guys go for practice?
It's usually 2.5 hours. This time of year, though, we have it down to an hour and a half, um, and we spend a little more time doing mental type work. I actually got we morphed closer and closer to that over my time. I learned that, early in my career, I thought we had to be grinding on these guys up to the last minute, and I was wondering why at the end of the year, early in my career, we sometimes played flat in a conference tournament. And when we started backing off guys, giving them more downtime, uh, that changed. And I had a nice talk with Pat Casey a couple of times, and asking him about late season runs. And that's one thing he recommended, was take some miles off them, do more meetings, more mental work. You've had all those reps, and that was good advice that he had given to me at one point.
Yeah, that was Andy Lopez when Arizona won it that year. They basically were doing it with four guys, so he was like, they didn't even throw bullpens at the end of the year. He was like,
Right.
the year they
Well,
won it, they used like four guys at the end of the year to get through that thing. He was like, yeah, they didn't even throw bullpens.
part of coaching, and I think you get better at this the longer you coach, because you've seen more, you've made more mistakes through the school of hard knocks. But one of the biggest facets to being I think, a good late season coach is figuring out when to stop coaching, and get out of their way. One thing my dad always told me, when he was coaching high school football, he also had to coach track, and he would coach the shot putters, and he didn't know that much about it. And I said, "Well, what did you do?" And he goes, "I did everything I could. He goes, I didn't want to turn a 40-foot shot putter into a 30-foot shot putter." So basically, it's knowing when to stay out of their way, And sometimes coaches feel like they got to be the reason a kid's successful or a team's successful, and it doesn't
I
have to
talked to
be
a
that way.
coach the other day. It didn't end the way that he wanted, and I'm like, hey, you're putting too much emphasis on yourself. Like, I there's a lot of things out of your control. You're dealing with 18 to 22-year-old kids, so don't put so much pressure on yourself. That and injuries have a lot to do with that too. If your best players are banged up, there's only so much that you're going to be able to do. Like it's the cards that you were dealt, so you got to play with it. And I think postseason time, especially for coaches, is a time to just sit back because they're already putting pressure on themselves because it's
Yep.
postseason. The worst thing you can do is add more to that because then they're going to be tight. And so you
Yep.
do have to get out of their way in the postseason because they're already going to be wound up because it's the postseason. So you do have to be able to get out, and that's hard for coaches. I mean, it is hard. That's a tough adjustment for coaches to have to make.
Well, it is, and you know, uh, there's I forgot who said this, and I forgot where I heard it, but something that I try to live by since I heard it was, when you want to say something to a kid or a team or whatever, there's you can go through it. You ask the question, does it need to be said? Okay, maybe it needs to be said. Okay, does it need to be said by me? Well, maybe the answer is yes. Does it need to be said by me right now? That's the key point. And if you work through that progression, honestly, I think you can make some better decisions.
And since you've put more emphasis and responsibility on your seniors, do they take care of a lot of that for you?
They absolutely do. Uh, um, I got hooked up on one of those think tanks with an amazing guy named Fred Johnston, who runs a company called Initiative One it's in Wisconsin. And Fred's worked with the Seahawks. He worked with Pete Carroll and that group. And I got to spend a lot of time with him. And he taught me this concept, what he called, he's got a book out there. I think it's called Is Everybody on the Boat? But the concept of thoughtful leaders. And what a thoughtful leader is to him is a person in your organization who carries the most influence and he basically asks the question, who has your locker room? Um, and he told me the story when he worked with the Seahawks that he challenged them to find out who had the locker room. And, through a series of meetings and different things, he reported to the organization on which Seahawks had the heartbeat of the men, so to speak, in the locker room. And as it turns out, it can be very surprising. It's not always your star player, your best player. Who does the team listen to? And if you can identify who those thoughtful leaders are, you can utilize them to affect change and get correct answers and make even better decisions.
A lot of times it was our bench guys who never played, but also were our hardest workers in the weight room and on the practice field. I think the players appreciate the fact that here's a guy who's probably never going to see the field, but he's working just as hard as everybody else is. Like I felt like those guys were some of our best leaders because they had the locker room because guys saw like there's probably no hope for that guy to get any action at all, but they're still busting their butt. And so, yeah, that's probably a guy I respect a lot because I don't think a lot of kids would do that. So I think they have respect to those bench players that never see the field because they see how hard they're working, but they know that they probably could never do that. So they respect those guys.
You're exactly right. A simple thing with people like that on our first road trip this year, we had a new player on the road trip who had never traveled with us, a transfer. And I mean, we have a simple standard. I wouldn't even call it a rule. When we come down for breakfast, we're showered and we don't wear caps. And we look like we're ready for the day. We don't come down in flip flops and all that. And we had a young man come down and he had a hat on. It wasn't a bad looking hat. And I saw him come in. And then immediately, one of our what I would call thoughtful leaders stood up, walked over here, and just said, "Hey, we don't wear hats," and not confrontational. Our guys use terms like, "We don't do that here." If it's engaging with another team in a bench jockeying type way, we don't do that. We don't say that. We don't yell at the umpire that way. We don't do that, and that's just super powerful.
That was one of my dad's rules too, is the shower piece and no hats. And then you figure out why later on. It's because it basically guaranteed that everybody had gotten up. They didn't get up 1 minute before breakfast time. They had actually and showed some care too. Like that's a big piece. You're developing care when you develop those habits. Like, hey, I got to get up early. I got to shower. I got to get ready to go. You're developing better habits, but also you're going to perform better too because you're up. You're more alert.
Yeah, you feel better, man. There's nothing bad that comes from getting up and getting ready for the day, right? And the other way is just lazy. And and kids make mistakes. There, as we say, there's room for error, but we'll correct those errors. One thing I had mentioned Rod Olson is that I really like it, and that we use all the time as coaches is we ask the question: Are we coaching it or are we letting it happen? We're doing one of the two things. You're either coaching the behavior, or you're allowing it to occur, and you got to cross that bridge and answer those questions.
Do you feel like being an assistant helped you for 6 years? Do you feel like it helped you when you finally took over the program?
Absolutely. I was an assistant for two different football coaches, and I was an assistant for two different baseball coaches, so that really helped. And then of course, as a player, playing for Skip Walker, I played for my dad in the sport of football growing up. You have the chance, not to mention the managers and coaches in the minor leagues, but you have the opportunity to take what you liked, what was effective, you thought, and I haven't taken everything from any one person, but have robbed, I think, the best pieces from many. One of you asked the influential question. What one guy that was a huge influence on me, and I've never met him, is Skip Burtman. I'd love to meet Skip Burtman. But I was a young coach in 1993 at the coaching convention, I think in Dallas, and LSU had won the title, I think. But he was the key. He was the first speaker, and he did, the name of his talk was "Playing Together." And in those days, you could buy a audio cassette of the talks. I still have that audio cassette. I bet I've listened to it over 100
Pull
times.
on the rope.
And back in 2000, we had our worst season in 2003, and
So
we said,
what 39 wins?
yeah, it was. We were actually, I think,
Disappointing season with 30. You're 39 and 18, and it was a disappointing year.
well, there was some stuff that went on that was team level stuff where guys didn't necessarily get along, and we didn't operate very well as a team. And I pulled that tape out. That was the summer of 2003 after the season, and uh, I really, really listened to it and some things he did, and we started taking some of the advice that he had given in that talk in 1993 and put it into action. And from 2004 to this day, we've never had some of those same problems again. And someday when if I'm fortunate enough to cross paths with Skip, I'm gonna thank him, even though he's never met me, because that was very impactful to our organization.
You've had great offensive teams. Did you stay really involved as a head coach then with the hitters like you were as an assistant?
Yes, yeah, I've always done the hitting, and my assistants. I've got great assistants: Sean McKenney, Mark Vig, a guy named Steve Wojtek, who now has moved on, Jeff Rogers. Um,
I
and we also,
missed it as a head coach. I didn't. I had so many other responsibilities that I missed some of that cage time with the guys.
yeah.
So that was the only disappointing thing for me is transitioning from an assistant to a head coach. Is I felt like some of the development pieces went away just because of all the administrative stuff you had to do as a head coach. So I did
Oh
miss
yeah, it's
that
a lot.
piece.
It's a lot, and a lot of my stuff. As you mentioned, Skip Walker. I think he's a great hitting guy. Um, Probably the hitting piece and leadership are my two passions. Uh, but yeah,
And to
I
your
work.
credit, you've stayed with it. I think some head coaches get sidetracked with that where they go from away from their strengths sometimes of what they were really good at, maybe recruiting as an assistant, and then they get to a head coaching position. They feel like they have to change or change things. So I give you a lot of credit for like staying true to what you're good at and allowing that to still be a huge part of your program too.
Yeah, yeah, and I enjoy it. And to your point on strengths, I think that I have a couple of assistant coaches that are just amazing recruiters. They're better than me at that. And I tell them that. And I still recruit, but they're better at it. Some of those kids need to be the first contact with kids because kids really respond well to them. They're great with the kids and the families.
Is it easier now or more difficult now to coach hitters with the amount of information that's out there for them?
It's harder. Um, we have this talk all the time, I mean, kids forget that you know, as coaches, they're in our program. We make the lineup, so to speak. I mean, as a player, that would concern me. What does the head coach? What do the coaches want? I always ask that question. What does the coach want? I'll give that to them because I want to play. But these kids have such great access to at their fingertips. When I started coaching, I mean, I guess a kid could buy a video on VHS if they wanted to, but then you got to have the VHS player. You got to spend the money. Now you can search anything: how to throw a knuckleball, how to hit more home runs, and you're going to get a lot of different answers. And uh,
I
I
spent more
think,
time looking at my own swing. Like I think that's where we get lost in the shuffle. Kids are paying attention to so many external things. Focus on your own swing. Like what works for
right,
you. Focus on what works for you. They're drinking from the fire hose, and they just simplify it. Focus on your swing and clean up your own swing. Like clean up your swing.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. And the other thing that happens with hitting is a hard skill. We all know that. Uh, we make it harder by making it more complex as well. We need to simplify it. And if you can simplify it down to a limited amount of cues or things, and we always talk in our program, a guy's got to understand that when you're taking batting practice, whether it's off a coach, a machine, you're hitting off of a tee, the flight of the ball after you strike it tells you a lot about your swing. And learning to get the ball to do what you want it to do in a controlled environment, like a front toss flip or something shortened up, a controlled drill where there's a lot of strikes. Um, it's like almost like an extended version of pepper in a way. The old guys played a lot of pepper. You learned how to manipulate the barrel.
We went to long pepper if we were struggling. It
Yeah,
was a modified. You're gonna choke up. You're just trying to stripe the ball through the infield, and it's amazing what happened when guys finally learned how to control the barrel. It's amazing.
it's crazy. And we've done over the years, I've tried like heck. I don't want pepper to die.
I
So
don't either. I didn't
we
either.
teach kids how to play pepper.
Yes.
And you know what? They don't like it initially.
Yes, they don't.
It's kind of hard.
It's
It's hard.
twofold though. One, it's barrel control, but for defense too. Like you're getting more reps off the bat for the defenders too, and you can have fun with it. We had so much fun playing pepper, and it's competitive.
It is
If you miss
competitive.
the
And
ball, you go to the back of the line. Like if you don't catch the ball, you go to the back of the line. It's competitive.
it is. And it's a great drill for pitchers. When you have those segments where you don't have anything for the pitchers to do, on one level it feels like, oh, we're just shoving them over there to play pepper. But you know how many balls they get to handle.
Yes.
And that's the one shortcoming of the pitchers is they don't get the opportunity to handle enough short hops, and things. And it's actually a good drill.
Very good. What are some other keys? I mean, CSI was wood back when you were playing, right? It's still wood, correct?
It was metal when I played, and it switched to wood after. I don't know what year they switched, but it was metal.
Because I think
When
wood cleans up a lot of inefficiencies too for kids
certainly
using it.
does.
I think
It certainly does.
smaller
I
sweet
mean,
spot, heavier, and
yeah, and
nobody
there's a
likes to
threat of
break their
breaking your
bat.
bat.
Don't break your
Yeah.
bat. Better swing at good pitches so you don't break your bat.
Well, I remember going through the minor leagues. The longer you play, you figure out, man, you can get a lot of mileage out of your BP bat without breaking it. When you learn to hit.
Mine
But
had
early on,
one spot. I would tape it to keep it. I still have my one from the Cape League. It has like the Joey Votto where it's on the same spot every time. Like I had no power, but my average and base hits were good. But it was like Votto. It was on the same spot on that tape every time, which I had some feel for my barrel. And I think wood does that. I would make guys tape their wood up all the time just to get feedback on where they're squaring the ball up on the bat.
it's a great way to do it.
Yep.
It certainly is.
Do you do fall evaluations with your players?
Yeah.
You do annual
Yes, we
fall
do.
evaluations? How does that work for you all?
It works well. We're very creative, and I mean, in terms of telling them what they need to work on, where their deficiencies are. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yes. You have
Um,
them rate each other, or is it all coaches
oh,
evals?
all of us coaches evaluate a kid together.
Yeah, I think that's kind of gone away too with the newer generation. We used to evaluate each other coming out of the fall. My dad would make us evaluate the players and the pitchers. And I think from a peer group setting now, I don't think it works as well with the newer generation of kids because they don't handle confrontation well. And I think they feel like they're getting
Nope.
called out by their teammates, which they're
Yep.
not. They're being honest about where they felt like you were at in the fall. But I think kids they take it too personally now.
Yeah, they certainly do. It's a different coaching's changed. It's different. And you bring up the social media. I got fairly frustrated with the kid. I think it was last year, near the end of the year in the tunnels, and I was trying to help the kid and just wasn't listening to a very simple concept. And I got frustrated, and I asked him, I said, if maybe I had to start a Twitter account, if I put this drill on Twitter, would you listen to it? And you know,
That's how Friday Fielders started. I mean, Kai, those guys started it, Tucker Frawley, because they made a fake account so their players would actually listen to what they were saying because they didn't know it was them. So that's why they started Friday Fielders.
I
Is
didn't know it started as a fake
it was
account.
a fake? I mean, it wasn't a fake account, but they started it and nobody knew it was them for
Right.
their players, so they could be like, "Hey, look at this! It's on social media." So maybe you
Oh,
need to start like a pseudo hitting Twitter account that's yours, which is going to have phenomenal information, but then be like, "Look what I saw on Twitter today."
oh, that's a great idea. Uh, if I do that, I'll let you know the name of it and
Yes,
see.
please.
Let you
Because
know
your
how it
team's
goes.
mash. I need some secret sauce because your teams do mash. Do you have a fail forward moment? Do you have something you thought was going to set you back, but looking back now, it was something that kind of pushed you forward?
Well, I would go back a little bit to the bad year in 2003 that we had, and really all the things that happened internally. I made the biggest mistake I made as a coach was this. To answer your question, that particular year, so it was the fall of 2002. I think we had 5 or 6 really good Division I transfers coming in. Two pitchers from the University of Arizona who were high school draft picks. They were big scholarship guys. It didn't work out. They bounced from Arizona, and among others. And I remember going into the fall and meeting with the coaches as we were getting ready to set the fall. And in those days, I think we only had 24 days to practice as a team. And I remember clearly thinking, we got some dudes, we got talented kids. They don't need drills and fundamentals. They just need at bats and innings pitched. So that fall, 21 of the 24 days that we had was just scrimmaging. That was it. And when we got back in the spring, scrimmage, at bats, innings pitched. And we underachieved. It still might be one of the most talented teams we ever put together, but they are the worst performing team in my 25 years to this point. And it really boiled down to the internal stuff, the team dynamics, uh, and that's what we got fixed moving forward.
I think that's where you'll see the NIL take a negative turn. It's the NCAA's fault. They didn't put stipulations on any of this.
Yep.
So coaches are just doing what's available to them, which I completely understand. But it shouldn't be for guys to get them on campus. It should be for the players. I think one thing, NCAA, I know you don't listen to me ever, and you never will, but you should have a year in residency on campus before you can take NIL money. I think you should have to establish a year of residency on campus before you can get any NIL money. And I still think it should be a graduation component. I think it should all go into a fund. Once you get your degree, then you'll get your NIL money. And I know people run me through the ringer for saying that because kids deserve to get the money now. I think there should be a carrot dangled out there. Okay, if you want this money, you need to get your degree. I know people be like, you're wrong on that, which I might be, but I just think there needs to be some regulations on NIL.
Well, I don't disagree with you one bit. There are some problems in our game, in our sport. That's one of them. The NIL is problematic. The transfer portal's problematic. Um, it's good in some sense. We had a kid here at the end of the fall a pitcher who he wasn't going to get to pitch for us, but I had told him, you're going to be on the team. I'm not going to remove you. This is just, you're probably not going to get to pitch. And he said, he wanted to get in the transfer portal. And I said, you have my blessing. And I think the transfer portal was built for that kid. He wasn't going to get to play here. We were clear with him on that. We like the kid and the person. He's a great student. Um, but on this particular year, there was not going to be an opportunity. And so he got to transfer and try to go play somewhere else where somebody had a greater need. And but unfortunately, the transfer portal is being used in a lot different ways. And now, as college coaches, some of our best players, we have to even be careful about sending them out in the summertime and where they go and who they're with.
At
Uh,
least in the past, I mean, you saw it before the transfer was put in. It was Division One scooping up Division One players because
yep.
I don't know why we did away with as you move up levels, you have to sit out a year. I don't know why we went away from that. I think that again that gets it back to where it should be. If you want to move up levels, that's fine, but you got to sit out a year to do that.
Well, I'll tell you, on some, and it's happened to us. We lost our Friday night starter that went to a Big 12 school and was their Friday night starter the next year. It killed us. It was probably the difference in us last year losing in the Super Regional as opposed to winning the Super Regional and moving on. And um, but beyond that, beyond just the move, what happens with some of those things with marquee type players at Division 2 or 3 or NAI, whatever it is those moves aren't, in my opinion, being handled above board. There's back channels that are occurring because a lot of those top flight kids aren't going to just jump in the transfer portal, not knowing where they're going to land.
Exactly.
I believe that most of the time they know where they're going to land, and then a school loses them, a school who's been loyal to them. It turns into dirty business.
And again, that's NCAA's fault for not legislating this. Like there should be more
Correct.
oversight for all of this. It's like they wiped their hands of it and was like, okay, you guys all go figure it out. And that's what they should be for, is keeping the integrity of the game. And there needs to be guidelines. As human beings, you have to have guidelines for humans, because if not, then all hell's going to break loose. Like there
Yeah,
has
that's
to
a
be
little what we've seen.
guidelines.
Yeah.
Because if not, there's going to be that certain few that are going to take advantage of it. Oh, there's no stipulations. Okay, good. I can do whatever I want. It's,
Yeah, and do whatever you want, no matter what the
well, you
effect
know
it
there's going to
has.
be nothing coming back. There's no blowback for it. There has to be
Correct.
blowback.
That's right.
Like that's the only thing that keeps that top 10% that's going to work around and navigate around the system. You have to try to keep that 10% in check, because if not, then things like that are going to happen.
That's right.
Is reading your morning routine? Do you read in the mornings?
Yeah, I probably read more at night,
I'm more of
but
a night
sometimes,
reader too. I try to
yeah,
get my meditation and exercise done in the morning, and then I kind of go in spurts with it, where I'll read like 3 books at a time, and then I'll be done with it for a while. But yeah, I'm more of an evening reader also, right before bed.
yeah, and then well, of course, at our level, bus trips.
Yes.
Uh, uh, and where we're located, our nearest opponent is 4 hours away, so there's plenty
how
of
do
bus.
you make your non-conference schedule work?
It's difficult, it's really difficult. We have to fundraise a lot of money to play a schedule we want. For example, this year we found that we had a bye week in April that matched up with Rollins College out of Sunshine Conference in Florida. So we reached out and we set a 2-year deal. They came here this year, and now we'll open up next year at Rollins in February. You just got to find people that are willing to travel. We have to do really good guarantees to get them to come, and you just got to pound
With your
away and stay on it.
guarantees, is it hotels, meals, is it cash? What are you doing for guarantees?
Uh, all of the above, and then different things for different schools depending upon what their needs are.
Mine
And
was
then
hotels and meals first, because if they gave us cash, we never saw it. And coaches are like, "What are you
oh
talking about?" I'm like, "If you give us 20,000, it's going to our athletic department. It's not going to our baseball program. So I need hotels and meals." They're like, "Are you sure?" I'm
yeah,
like, "Yes." Luckily, some of the bigger schools, it was hotel, meals, and cash, which is fine. But I was like, if push comes to shove, like I don't want the money. I want hotels and meals, because it actually benefits us, because the cash is going to go to Western Illinois' athletic department and not to the baseball program.
that's what we are primarily meals and hotels, and then on the rare occasions that it's a check, it's like uh, mail it directly to me, and then I'll walk that check over to the college foundation and deposit that sucker before anybody sees it.
And shout
But
out to Dave Van Horn at Arkansas. That's why we always went and played them, because he took care of us. And Rich Price at Kansas too, who's not coaching anymore. But Coach Price and Coach Van Horn were the best, because they had come from that side. Like they weren't Power Five coaches to start. They were lower level coaches, so they appreciated lower level programs. They always took care of us. I love both
oh,
those
that's
guys.
great. Yeah, Rich Price, great guy. I don't know Dave, but I know
Dave's
Rich.
awesome. Done a great job. What are some final thoughts before I let you go? I know you're getting ready to win this thing, so what are some final thoughts before I let you go?
Well, I just think that coaching is leadership and trying to figure that out. And I mean, all this journey in coaching isn't, it's ongoing. You know, we have a saying in our program: you have to have a white belt spirit, and a white belt is the beginning belt in the martial arts, and you got to have a spirit that you're always learning. And I do really believe, and my dad said, at the minute you think you know it all and you got it all figured out, you're number one, you're going to get humbled, but number two, your growth will stop. And so, uh, you just got to keep trying to get better.
Coach Hanks, thanks for your time. And honestly, Jim Richardson, I think of all the coaches in the country, I think he has the most respect for you of any coach in the country. And that's all I need to know about you. Is
Oh, that's
that
cool. Well, Jim,
JR respects you the most of anyone in the country. So that's a huge compliment to you.
well, that's nice to hear. Thanks for sharing that. And of course, Jim does a wonderful job, and I enjoy working with him with the ABCA. And hopefully, we can push to get some things accomplished to make this whole thing better and better.
Yeah, I'm excited for you guys. I think you're going to get that done. So appreciate it. Good luck the rest of the way out. Hopefully I see you here soon. Appreciate you.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me. It was a pleasure.